Susan, you mentioned another healing modality that I wonder if we could talk briefly about, which is Jin Shin
Jin
Jyutsu.
Shin Jyutsu. It's a Japanese healing modality that Mary Burmeister brought back from Japan to this country and started teaching it. And it's a very powerful. I'm a beginner, even though I've studied it for a number of years. I really consider myself a beginner, but I find it really, really helpful. And the most helpful aspect that I have found is I can't even remember the terms, but I hold all of my fingers in the morning, starting with the ring finger, and then you go to the thumb, index, middle, and pinky finger, and then you do the palm,
the center of the palm,
all five of your fingers together.
Rub it in a circular motion for those that are just listening.
And you hold each of these positions for 3 breaths. So they call it the 36 breath. You breathe in and breathe out 3 times in each of these positions. And if you think about it, in polarity therapy, all of these fingers have energy lines running through them.
Right.
All of your fingers have acupuncture meridian lines running through them. And it's a great way to start your day.
Nice.
There is a whole cosmology based on Jin Shin Jyutsu. Basically, you start from source and it splits into positive and negative, or masculine and feminine, and then it comes down, and then it manifests down into the chakras and, in the meridians. And so it's another whole healing modality that I need to spend a lot more time with.
And you mentioned is kind of an offshoot from Reiki, right?
Marielle is an offshoot. Ethel Lombardi, who started Marielle, had been a Reiki master and one of the top ones in the country. And then she broke off and started her own, and said that the reason I never studied Reiki is because after I graduated from her class, I naively said to her, "So you think I should study Reiki now?" And she says, "Well, why would you? If her form of energy was a higher frequency, why would you study Reiki?"
Right.
And I never did, So, and what's really interesting is that's the form that everybody knows about, Besides acupuncture, Reiki, everybody knows Reiki, at least by name.
Exactly. And so we are now back in 1998. You're in the West Coast in Washington State, and Dietrich is the one who's facilitating this constellation workshop.
Yeah.
You have a very powerful experience as you enter the representation of a granddaughter in somebody else's family constellation. You enter the field, as we call it. And as you start to go back to your seat, you go back to your normal state. And at that point, your heart, your essence, your mind gives you a really loud calling, right?
Absolutely. And it's, you need to learn more. You need to know more about this. Unbeknownst to me, that, back then in the late 90s, we didn't have internet and cell phones and all that. And I really had to use telephones and figure out how to figure out what was going on in the world. And it turns out that Bert Hellinger was coming to Washington, D.C. for a 2-hour workshop as part of a comprehensive cancer care conference. And lo and behold, it was in a time of year that I was quite sick, probably from allergies, but may have been the flu, and I couldn't even drag myself out of bed to go to it.
It's like springtime, May, April.
Oh, yeah, it was just awful. And so it turns out he was coming for several years to that same conference. And when I realized he was going to the conference the next year, I was there. At the same time, I found out he was going to be in DC at that conference on Thursday. And on Saturday and Sunday, he was doing a workshop in New York City.
Okay.
So Friday, we took the train up and we were at that workshop.
Nice.
And they announced that they were going to, it was amazing to watch the master work. And I was scared silly because some really amazingly heavy energies came in when somebody represented an SS officer, in a constellation that had the energy of Holocaust in it. It was more than my energy field could handle. It just didn't feel good,
And that was during the weekend workshop in New York, right?
Yes.
And on the Thursday cancer conference, it was more of a theoretical talk that he gave?
He actually was doing constellations for people who had cancer.
I see.
And I realized at that point, this man is a warrior. He
Indeed.
can tell someone, he
doesn't mince words.
Not at all. And he spoke the truth. And somebody said, well, I have cancer, with a smile in their face, and he would make a comment about it. Are you afraid of cancer? No. And his comment would be, you should be, and instead of putting up something else, he put up a representative of death for that person. It was, it was very shocking to my system to see someone be so truthful,
Right.
and so honest with what he saw. And that encouraged me to learn more,
Gotcha.
So when I went up to that workshop in New York, Harold Honan had announced that they were going to be having their first training in the United States. And I was wringing my hands. Oh my God, how am I going to tell my husband I'm going to be spending another 6 weeks away, 6 weekends away in New York, and the money is cling, cling, cling,
right,
how much I'm spending. And, by the time I went over and put my name on the list, my husband's name was first on the list.
How come?
He had decided he was going to do it too.
Oh, wow. So he went up with you to the workshop to observe, and he was the first one to be convinced that this was incredibly. Wow.
Yes. So
he did the training with you.
He did the training, and we taught for a number of years together, along with Dale Schusterman, our friend and chiropractor from the area.
Which I think, as a side comment here, is extremely important as a starting facilitator, if you're in the beginning journey, to do this in partnership with somebody else to co-facilitate, in order for you to be able to hold a larger container, if you will, psychically, for the